All right, good evening. Let's call to order our Community Development Advisory Committee for Wednesday, January 22nd. Let's see, the time is 6:40 for the start of this meeting. Let's do attendance, please. We'll start up in the balcony with Deborah.
Thank you. Deborah Hogan, mayoral appointee.
John Brunza, mayoral appointee.
Marianne Callahan, mayoral appointee.
Michelle O'Loughlin, council at large.
Jordan Trice, 5th District.
And I'm Justin McGregor, 7th District and Chair of the CDAC. All right, let's start things now with approval of some minutes. We do have quorum. First, the minutes from December 11th meeting. You should have gotten these in your email, and I think they're in front of you as well. Give you a second to look them over. Also, we're passing around the attendance sheet. All right, the minutes for 12/11. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the December 11th minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Deborah, are you voting for that one? Aye, okay. Thank you. All right, next up, the approval of the minutes for last Wednesday, January 15th. Has everyone taken a look at them?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 15th, 2025
All right,
meeting.
Michelle has made a motion. Any seconds?
A second.
Jordan seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Both unanimously carried. All right, fourth on our agenda is the consolidated plan discussion. Stephen?
All right, so this meeting is going to be more of a brainstorming, talking, open forum kind of thing. You guys have seen, we've had the data meetings, we've had the meetings discussing the agency applications, the agencies applied, and have now all presented to you. Hopefully in the meantime, you've been talking with people in the community, business owners, residents, your neighbors, churches even, or whatever groups you hang out with. Any sort of communication you're getting from the city, anything you're seeing in the news, anything you personally wish to talk about or advocate for, we need to start incorporating these into more specific ideas and focal points. So I kind of said this bulleted list. We'll go down little bit by little bit. I'll also talk to you about some, and it's not on the agenda, we can talk about it at the end. HUD recently gave us a breakdown of certain things that cause us to have higher risk for HUD oversight. So these are things that are not against the rules, but they're things that HUD tends to not frown on, but not smile at. And it's important to take this stuff into account. I'll also talk about some of the margin stuff, and we need to be aware of that. So the first thing on there is agencies and stakeholders. So you've heard pretty much from the nonprofit agencies that are going to always advocate for their client base, which is good. But there's also agencies that didn't apply. And stakeholders and stakeholder groups we may want to reach out to. Now, it's on the schedule for 2 or 3 meetings from now to have the stakeholders come in, I think. For those who will attend, we may not get that many. You already approved sort of the stakeholder the non-applicant stakeholder form for them to fill out. Again, this is all voluntary. But the whole point of this is to get feedback from agencies that serve a particular client base that have unmet needs and to find out what those unmet needs are. So although we really can't incorporate that into discussion, we can start looking at, what groups do you want me to reach out to? What, or what advocacy groups, what clients do we want to reach out to address the needs? Now we'll talk about needs and goals later. So this could be sort of a broad conversation that kind of wraps back in on itself. But I guess the first thing is what agencies and stakeholders do you want to hear from, or what clients with what you perceive as unmet needs, having talked to these other presenters, that you want to get more feedback from agencies that are not applying for funding?
Steve?
Yeah, I'm right now.
I was thinking maybe Glory Shines, ran by Sana Wakefield.
Glory Shines.
She does a lot of homeless outreach and feeding the community. She does like community meals. I know she did a thing, I believe it was last spring, where she took a bunch of the moms and daughters and little girls that are staying in the homeless hotels. She took them all out to get manicures and pedicures at the mall. She also did like a mom's day out where she took some of the moms out for like brunch and things like that. She's been really doing a lot for our community. I feel like she would be a good stakeholder to reach out to.
Okay, so her client base are homeless?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I can definitely reach out to her. Yeah.
What's her name?
Sana Wakefield, SanaWakefield.
I can probably do a little research to try to find a contact
She's
information
all
for
over
her.
Facebook,
Yep.
honestly.
Okay.
Wakefield? Yes, Wakefield.
And if Justin and Deb wanted to go. Deb wanted to go.
Thank you. Few of the things that come to mind are youth programming. Yes, we have the traditional ones that seem to hit the same target population. I'm very interested in hearing with the department presentation on what is being done with St. Mary's Rec Center. I am so excited for that for Center City. That's going to be fabulous. Also outreach to the churches, all of them, all denominations. I think they have a good pulse on our community and what are some of the needs through the community meals, the different like showers of hope, obviously we know about, but there are pantries, there are clothing to help individuals. Big thing is accessibility in this building.
Oh, it's a new one. Okay.
But in general, for being able to attend programming, whether it's at our senior center or our partners that receive funding.
I mean, are you taking like Stick, like reach out to Stick for accessibility, or
Yes, that's a start.
staff possibly as well? I'm trying to think who else would deal with disabled access, disabled outreach.
AVRE,
Yes, well, they apply. Well, oh, they didn't apply this year, did they?
No.
no.
They did apply last year, and we're doing a facade improvement.
And it
Okay.
actually brings up, because I had a conversation about accessibility for here
Mhm.
and recommended to the deputy city clerk what Eric Dent did about 30 years ago was a doorbell that goes to where Marianne, it's a wireless to let you know someone's out here accessing if they don't know how to call the police. And then also having the signage downstairs and also Braille. So that's why I recommended the AVRE.
I mean, personally, I don't like the fact that you have to leave a warm or cool in the summer building to go into crap weather to then come across a thing to come in through a door. I mean, I just don't like that. I wish there was like almost like a covered tunnel or something like that would allow that. But yeah, accessibility, I think in general ADA compliance can be met with CDBG funds, even in a government facility, I believe. So this is something that can actually be done. If you're talking about stuff that the city specifically could do, that is a possibility, although we need to talk with parks and maybe even the mayor's office on how to utilize CDBG funds to improve accessibility in the thing. So
Yes, we did that, and that's how we have what I call the elevator box. 30 years ago, that
Oh,
was
that
how
thing?
the funding was done for that.
that's 30 years old. I can believe it.
Does it work?
I don't know if it works. It
I
screams like
asked
a,
that question and they said it's been under maintenance. It was utilized last fall and they've been testing it weekly. So,
but the problem is if you cannot take stairs, you're still having to go through the BS of coming through this stuff, which is a pain. It's not fair.
Right.
And then, yeah, you can then once you get up to this platform, you can get lower down, but it's still an enormous pain
Yeah.
What's right at the bottom of the stairwell right there?
at the bottom, which stairwell?
This one.
I'm not, which,
No,
We're
I'm talking about-
this.
you hang over the edge over there to look down at us.
yeah.
What's under that?
I don't know. It's,
Like, why couldn't an elevator come up right there?
or why couldn't they punch a hole from the second floor into that? Oh, wait, no, there's a hallway there, isn't there?
Yeah,
Um,
stairwell.
yeah. So you're saying thinking about putting even like a mini elevator just to come up to this? That's an interesting idea. Mini
Then you
elevator.
wouldn't have to go over there, go up the elevators and even come across. You'd come right up.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. We'd have to get a quote on that. That's absolutely elevators are gonna price goes.
Oh, yeah.
So mini
I know, but
elevator.
that's a high
It should be a
ticket.
thing, whether it's the CDAC or the city of Binghamton. Public access for all to city council chambers should be
Yeah.
a priority.
Now, I will say the gentleman, was it this year or last year, who came from, I believe it was AVRE, who was blind, and I stopped him on his way out and I said, "Hi, I want to say this right and not be offensive. Are you blind?" "Yes." "Okay. Did you have trouble accessing City Hall?" And he did not. So, but I do know we've had presenters and stuff like that who've had to, do this. And then we had the stuff last week with the whole the door was locked and we had to go down to the police and because the guard had left, and that's not something that should ever happen. It's
No.
really not good. So, okay, mini elevator. Okay, see, so these are kind of spitballing ideas. Any other groups or advocacy or any other underserved groups or stakeholders or agencies that serve those underserved underserved groups we should discuss?
I'd like to kind of kick this up a notch, as Emerald says. Homelessness obviously is the huge problem around here.
Yep.
And we deal with the agencies that, I hate to say it like this, but they put the Band-Aid on the homelessness. They don't actually solve the problem. Is there anyone out there who's working on any kind of plans to create more housing in this area?
So that's more of a housing than
It's a
homeless
housing
thing.
thing. And it also goes back to, I realize that the way the block grant is structured right now, we can't do a heck of a lot about it. But it is a huge problem that's facing the city that seems to be growing exponentially every year.
So
And it needs to be begun. We need to begin a discussion about what to do with it and how to maybe turn the ship a little bit so that we're dealing with effective solutions to the problem.
okay, hold on just a minute because I want to. Deb, did you were starting to speak and I missed what you were starting to say?
Yeah, I had a couple more.
Oh, I'm sorry,
but
Deb.
I'll-
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay,
No,
okay, we'll
I
just
think
come to it.
this is a good flow of
Okay.
discussion. We'll just circle back to me would be fine.
So, housing needs can be met through the current block grant and various grants. With CDBG, we provide assistance to people to purchase homes. Obviously, you've got to be making enough money to purchase a home. So although we can provide $10,000 for closing costs or down payment assistance, you've got to meet the qualifications, but that still means you've got enough money to not only buy a house, but keep the payments going. We do provide funding, and this is where it gets a little, well, actually, let me skip. I'll come back to this, the one major one that might help the best. So the ESG funding, at least 40% of it has to be spent on rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention, or HMIS. Throw HMIS away. Let's just talk about the other two. The other two are being specifically, the point of them is to get people from the street into new housing by paying security deposit, first and last month's rent, that kind of thing, or to get someone who's about to be evicted to get their rent paid back or utilities paid back so that they're not losing, basic necessities, and they're not going to be homeless. So those programs already exist. We have our home program, which generally is used by homeowners to rehab their homes, which does keep people from being homeless in a sort of long-term way, because it's going to affect a lot of seniors, a lot of low-income people who simply cannot keep up their homes. So we go in and we can provide rehab work to fix up your houses. Now, there is a small subsection of home funds that we've used before, and we're working with the Housing Authority for this. It's called TBRA, which means tenant-based rental assistance. What we currently use it for, because the Housing Authority is the perfect agency to deal with this, so maybe I can reach out to the Housing Authority. They use it to help pay if anyone's going to Section 8 rental assistance or the various public housing apartments around the city. It pays for security deposit, your security deposit. So instead of having someone who's dirt poor having to now, I've got to pay $1,000 right out the bat, we cover that for them. They can just get right into making regular rent payments. So that's one thing we help with. The problem is there's a bottleneck on how much they can do, because it's based off people coming into the system. They spent the money at an excruciatingly slow pace. Now, I can reach out to other agencies to do this, but it's essentially Section 8 rental assistance. It's exactly the same in almost every way, shape, and form as Section 8 rental assistance. I cannot get the Housing Authority to ramp it up. It's enough money to help them with assistance, but it's not enough for them to go, oh, we're going to hire 2 new people and we're going to provide all this additional housing stuff. So it's one of those things where it's a Band-Aid because it can't be more than a Band-Aid for the size of it.
Well,
It's a big Band-Aid, but it's not,
Yeah.
it's not
And-
more than that.
It's my impression that, a lot of these policies and procedures were put in place when the housing stock in Binghamton was a completely different story.
Mhm.
And what we've got now, I mean, in my neighborhood alone, I think we have 3 houses that are uninhabited.
Yeah.
The people have passed away, and they could be rehabbed and people could, buy them. And I realize that it's a bit of a stretch for what we do now with the block grant, but it's a need in this city that's absolutely necessary. How can we leverage? It's like what we've begun to do with capital projects. We
Yeah.
never did them before, but maybe we could begin to look into how we can transition into something that provides real help to, if you increase the housing stock around here, you might even be able to put a fire under the Housing Authority because there'd be places for people to go. They can't find houses.
So what that leads you to are the final sort of subsections of what we can do for housing assistance. One are the CHOTO projects. CHOTO projects are long and difficult and annoyingly regulatory. We are looking at several right now, including First Ward Action Council, and I think there was one other, I can't remember. There's 3 total that are coming up. One is Saratoga Heights that is done by the Housing Authority through their CHOTO, the CPI. There's First Ward Action Council for the Gateway project, number 5, because they keep doing the Gateway project. And then one other is a redevelopment in the downtown area. Now, that'll provide assistance to renters, but it's difficult to get agencies to come on board because it's so onerous regulatorily. The other way we can do it is CDBG. Now, CDBG is much looser with regulations. And one thing you can do with CDBG is rent assist, rents, rehabs, and stuff like that. Now, to do rental rehabs, we can either, the city could buy a property, maybe one at foreclosure, or maybe one that's vacant, or condemn it or whatever, eminent domain. rehab it and sell it. We've done that before. We've sold properties using other grants to low-income people who want to purchase a home. We've done that. So we can keep doing that. But if we're looking from a rental perspective, one thing we can do, and it's really not talked about much, is we can use CDBG money to rehab rental units. Now, it's simple. It's easy. As long as the people that live in that unit, as soon as we nail that final nail in the board, are low income, we're good. No one has to do anything. We can walk away. No one's got to report anything. That system, if we did it that way, is absolutely rife with potential corruption. Thank you for rehabbing my rental units. Mr. Smith, who was in that unit, is now being evicted because I can now raise the rents. So that is something I've talked with Juliet about how we can make it into a system. First off, we'd have to have funding. So you guys would have to fund, and the mayor would have to agree to an amount of funding to sort of deal with this. Second off, we would have to have some solid like rules and regulations in place. Now, when I say that they just have to be a low mod once the final nail's in, that's just HUD's regulation. The city can be much more strict if we wish, and I think we should. My goal, and this is always, I always look at that, what's my ideal client that we're serving? And in that case, I say, my ideal client is a little old lady who's retired. She has a 2-unit home or a 3-unit home, or she has this house and the house, her lovely neighbor who passed away 10 years ago, sold to her right before she passed away. She just wants to rehab it, rent it out, make a little bit extra money so she can afford a few more groceries or
Duplexes
fun stuff.
in this town, you know, where, like
What?
me, duplexes where owner lives in the first floor and then the second floor
And
is.
they're pretty common.
Yes, they are.
And I like that idea. Now, the question is, how do we structure the rules and this is not something I'm asking you guys to solve. Me and Juliet have hammered a lot of these things out, trying to figure it out. But that's sort of my ideal. What I don't want is, and this of course is a stereotype, the dentist from Long Island who hires a guy up here to find him units that he can rent to students. And that's as much of a stereotype as it's also somewhat the truth in many
Oh,
cases.
absolutely. But First Ward Action Council has proven that a local agency can monitor
Mhm.
tenants and keep them, because their properties that have been done years ago are still in good shape,
Mhm.
because if they get a bad tenant, that tenant's out of there eventually. And the word gets out, that you're not going to tolerate. So there's a whole paradigm shift that has to happen here.
So that's actually another option I hadn't thought about till you said that. We could purchase the homes or acquire them, rehab them with CDBG or potentially, well, let's just say CDBG for now. Rehab them with CDBG and then turn them over to an agency
Exactly.
to continue using.
Exactly.
So that's an
And the
idea.
First Ward Action Council is the pilot on that project. I mean,
Yeah, it would be
they
first,
have-
it would
they
be the
have the
agencies that are
protocol.
housing
They-
agencies, yeah.
But they have the protocol. They've done it. It's been successful. It can be done. Because the First Ward is ripe with those kinds of
Yeah.
properties that could be opened up.
Okay,
And you're building community while you're doing.
all right.
Within 3 blocks of my house, there are 11 vacant homes right now.
So the vacant homes are definitely something I know when we have a vacant property officer. I think one thing, and I'm not here to disparage the people of the city of Binghamton. I'm not from here. I was not born here. I know that there's an identity here. The old, was it Endicott Johnson identity? This is the whole, what Binghamton looks like in the Twilight Zone, avoiding the creepy stuff. I mean, that's basically what the city used to be. People had that sense of neighborhood, or used to. And, a lot of that sort of changing as, the kids have moved away to find jobs elsewhere. Their parents either, pass away or move away, and the kids inherit the houses, and then they don't always know what to do. So, we get a lot of people coming in talking about, all these fantastic things they want to do with it. And it may not be realistic what they want to do with it. They, people, student housing. I'm like, student housing's oversaturated. You're going to rent, the only way you're going to make money, I think, from student housing is if you go dirt cheap on the rehabs to and maybe not even pass code. I was going to say just pass code, maybe not even pass code. You rent them to some students who aren't going to complain, who are probably going to wreck the place. And then at some point, you just stop paying your taxes and the property gets condemned. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't help neighborhoods at all. So I know we've just tried to address that with the student housing zoning issue, and I can't really speak more of that. It's more of a Tito and Juliet question. But yeah, it's one of those things. We have tools in our toolbox, but trying to use those tools in an effective way is the difficult part. So, and the grant's not unlimited. You know, we only have roughly
Exactly.
2.25 million amongst all three grants, which sounds like a lot of money, but it's not. It really isn't.
But it
So,
may be possible to create a small program that might catch on and who knows what kind of private investments might come from it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we need to begin to talk about a solution to homelessness, a
yeah.
real solution to homelessness.
Well, the issue has always been it should be housing first, and that was kind of HUD's
Absolutely,
position,
absolutely.
which is why they push for rapid rehousing.
But how
homelessness
does it apply
prevention.
to this community with all those vacant properties? How can it be leveraged? How can the existing housing stock be leveraged to solve some of the problem? I know there are new projects, you know, on
Yeah.
the Vale Baloo property on Clinton Street is going to be a part of a solution. Saratoga,
Yeah,
I
the
know.
Saratoga renovations.
yeah, the Saratoga and also the Countrytown Apartments, that's going to
Ah.
be something. But what do you do with the housing stock that I live around?
Yeah. I can tell you on paper, it looks weird because it looks like we have a ton of housing. And technically we do.
We have structures.
What we don't have is a ton of quality housing, a ton of housing that we can just turn, you know, from a unit that's been vacant for 5 years and move a family into it.
Exactly.
No, we're going to go in there. First thing we're going to notice, there's no copper because it's all been ripped out of the walls. I mean, that's the first thing we're going to notice.
Well, and the
That's
state
all got to be
regulations are
replaced and utilities.
cost
and-
prohibitive in a case like my neighborhood where the houses, you know, are maybe $60,000-$70,000.
Yeah, that's
And
the
you're
other
gonna
thing.
you're gonna put 120 into it because that's what the land bank used to do and then sell it for 75. That's crazy.
Yeah. I
So
mean-
how do we begin our dialogue that we can start to actually address, you know, bring to awareness even this issue?
To
and
be
how do we
fair,
leverage it?
the grants from CDBG can be sort of spent in a non-efficient way. You could pour $100,000 in a house that's going to be 75 after rehab, potentially, and then sell that to a low-income homeowner. You could do that. It is sort of a loss from the city's perspective, but that is a potential thing you can do. You can do it more as you can do it as more grants or whatever. So you can kind of, if you think of it, spend money on affecting change. If that's
This is what I'm trying to get at. How do we begin a dialogue? It may take years for us to actually leverage what we do. But if we don't talk about it, we're never going to get there.
I will say probably the best thing to start with is if you guys come up with something solid and small to start with and present it to the mayor. You say, we got this idea. CDAC thought this was a good idea. You know, it's not an agency applying. It's what we think the city could do. Present it to the mayor, maybe even separately outside of the city council presentation, and just say, hey, this sounds like a good idea. What do you think? And then see if the mayor's willing to go with it.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's something you guys could
You've
do.
thrown the gauntlet down. Thank you.
All right. I don't want to drag this out too long because the last few meetings have been extremely long. So I don't want to drag this meeting out too long. Are there any, yeah, Deb.
I just wanted to circle back to my initial list and then it will dovetail nicely, I believe, with Mary Ann. We also need to reach out and hear from the Chamber of Commerce. I do believe we're embarking on an era of public-private partnerships, that there is a new optimism for that.
Mhm.
Also linking into BOCES, our young people for trades, and that they may be able to provide labor and maybe do tiny homes that are helping with the housing issue for the flood victims from Helene.
Did I ever tell you, I don't know if I presented the CDAC. A few years ago, I was talking with, I don't know if it was Bob, no, it was Pete in my office. Does anybody remember the show Northern Exposure?
Yes.
Do you remember what the premise of the show was? The doctor's education was paid for, and then he had to stay and work in that community. I remember talking to Pete about this, and I remember him like, I don't know about it. And then I talked to Bob about it. I think Bob thought it was a little bit, is what if we did like a scholarship for trade, either SUNY or BOCES or something like that, where we pay for someone to get an education in, I don't know, something we think would be useful, like a contractor kind of thing. And then that person just has to stay and work in the city for an X number of years, determined based off the size of the grant. Now, I don't know how much education costs now. I know when I did it, it was way cheaper than it probably is now, which was much more expensive than when my parents went to school. But that is an idea, as you were saying, like the education. That was one I had come up with. I didn't really get any traction, and I'm just kind of curious what you guys think about something like that.
Lee Mayor had a media conference last fall where they were talking about working with the trades, and there may have been a few graduates shown. So maybe if that's an existing pilot program,
Okay.
then maybe that could be funded. But what I was also talking about, and it dovetails back to Marianne, is with the young people, it's almost like a Habitat for Humanity, which we have the
Mhm.
home over on Lyle Avenue, and could utilize existing stock that may be vacant. You would have the trades both from what I would say the high school to the adults, veterans.
Mhm.
This would be a great, public partnership. But I really think getting the Chamber of Commerce and getting their ideas, maybe reaching out to the trades professors up at BOCES might be of benefit. Also, I attended the very well-attended town hall on the good cause eviction and reaching out to landlords and also the Realtors Association was very different perspectives.
Okay.
And again, going with dovetailing back to the buildings or, like the person that is aging that has a 2 or 3 family home, is there a revolving loan that can be done to assist with a roof replacement? And there's a 10-year payback.
Well, we can
Um,
do that even as a grant potentially. So there's not, and I think I talked with, we have about $500,000 in the revolving loan account run by BLDC. And I talked to Sarah just a little bit about that. We'd have to come up with a program, but it's not out of the woods to use the RL funds for something more like that. I still think, though, that in a situation like that, like the 1 or 2 families, I would do that right as a regular CDBG loan with partial forgiveness, or even full forgiveness, depending on the nature of it, and then use the revolving loan fund for more incorporated landlords, so the bigger ones. The trick again, you gotta have those rules spelled out, because again, it's such a potential for it to be abused. You gotta have a lot of like really well-written rules and regulations about it and monitoring that are gonna be required to make sure it's not abused.
It's where I would have us look at the First Ward Action Council, because I know of a constituent that utilized the program. It's partial forgiveness over 10 years, but there's very stringent application.
Mhm.
But also, if they move, sell, pass away, there is payback that comes
Yep.
to the city. So
That-
and
that-
it's very well written.
That's very similar. I mean, our current rehab programs and current home purchase programs follow something similar. We've streamlined them, but the basic rules is the home purchase program, that's $10,000. That is a full forgiveness after 5 years. As long as you stay in the building, full forgiveness after 5 years. The rehab programs, essentially, the way it kind of works is it's up to 40%, up to 60% forgiveness after 5 years. But again, there's that requirement. You've got to stay in the house in 5 years. So there's a very strict requirement for that with the mortgage. But when you deal with like landlords, it can be a little different. So and that's the trick it's because it's not their unit specifically. So how do you prove that the tenants at a certain period, I mean, would they do annual reports to us? Would they, I'm not sure how you would do it. Because some landlords are just going to say no. As soon as they see any rules or regulations of after follow-up, they're going to say no. And I get that. So you want to make it something that it works, that people are going to utilize, but again, can't be abused. And that is my main worry, because the one time we do it where like there's some sort of, I hate to say slumlord, but some sort of slumlord takes advantage of this and kicks people out to make student housing out of something the city put money into for low-income people. I get fired at that point. I
You
won't
know-
be here.
You know,
As soon as I screw up the mayors, any mayors.
no, because we would fight it
election.
if they let you go, we get the pitchforks out. But here's the thing, you know, it occurs to me that the city has let the situation exacerbate to the point where, you know, people outside the city look for us because we are a soft touch, man. There's a beautiful house on my street that was bought by a guy in Monroe, and he's rented it. The management company is on Susquehanna Street, and the guy hasn't been there in 2 years on the property. The management company hasn't been there. They've trashed the house. They ripped up the lady's rose bushes and all this kind of stuff. If the city wants to do this well, there has to be some kind of program where the city has a hand in it, that they
Yeah.
can watch things, because we have ruined our reputation as far as housing go. We are suckers for, you know, bleed the house dry and get out of town people. It really has come to that. My street is full of it.
Okay.
So that there has to be a program sort of the way that the First Ward Action Council has set up their, you know, they monitor the properties, they vet the tenants, they have people that go in and, you know, visit those tenants all the time. That's the only way this is going to work because of our reputation. It's a sad thing to say, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Wanted to see what you guys think about blight removal. Spending money.
Well, we do spend the demolition money on blight removal. So right now, the city doesn't have an official definition of blight. We do have an official adopted definition of distressed properties because HUD required it because of blah, blah, blah. HUD is annoying. But we don't have a blight definition. Now, I think it would be really cool to have like blight metrics that we could
Yeah.
plug into mapping software and identify key areas of the city or even individual houses that meet this blight definition, that then once it meets that blight definition, boom, you kick into a program or a grant or something that's available, or, you know, it can be demolitions, rehab, city takes it over, blah, 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 something like that. But when you say blight removal, specifically, what are you meaning?
I mean blight / demolition.
So you specifically talking about demolitions?
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess so.
Okay.
And I have 2 sections of the city that it's just incredibly bad, and I harp on it all the time. Fayette Street, Deborah, you know, Fayette from Holly down. I think it might be, I know 5 Fayette is being demoed, but
Yeah, we're
it's not-
taking out a few properties on Fayette
but
Street.
it's across the street. Every one of those, and the garbage is so incredible between the houses because people will not buy the blue bags.
Hmm.
So they dump all the garbage between those houses, and you drive, I'm there every Tuesday morning, and it is incredible. The city has sent, because we've called, the city does send over, you know, DPW, and one day they spent almost the whole day over there. But the next day, it's not all of it back, but it's
Yeah.
it's starting all over again. It's really, really incredible. So that section, and then what about all the property on Henry Street, like across from the post office?
Hmm. Well, that's getting, I know that
Is
the road
all
itself is
that
getting
coming
revived. Well, I think there's a developer working on the buildings and then the
Stadium
city.
project.
Yeah, then the city itself is going to renovate the road itself to make it into some more like a boulevard kind of thing. So there is a focus to address the Henry Street.
Because honestly, if an out-of-town person comes, say, to go to a baseball game, and you come off the
Mhm.
Brandywine and take the Susquehanna Street exit and turn up Fayette to go to the baseball stadium, I mean, it's just astonishing. And it's
Would've been
been
Court
that
Street.
way. What's that?
Even Court Street.
Yeah.
Between
No, I know,
the
but
highway and Fayette Street, there's a half a dozen.
I mean, and it's been years and it's been every administration. So I don't see, I think the public in general, they just see no
They've given up.
progress
Mhm.
and just more deterioration.
I know I've brought this up before, but let me ask you this. How many of you in your life have had people visit or come into town and you give them directions that avoid areas you don't want them seeing?
Mm.
That's 4 of you. Yeah. I've done that. I live in Endicott and I've done it in Endicott too. And it's like, we should never have that in a city. That your city, you should be proud of it. Sure. Is every city going to have some sketchy areas? Sure. But it's
Every gateway into Binghamton now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Every one
yeah.
of them.
And I want to go on record to say that there's no way that I could give anybody directions in my neighborhood that would avoid all of that. So I don't even bother.
Yeah.
They're going to see what they're going to see. And we have a rat problem in this city that we've never had before. It's come out at the neighborhood watch meetings
Yes.
that people are saying there's rats been found at the end of Oak and Elm. And when they get up to my house, you're going to hear the scream. The mayor's going to hear the scream.
I've
Mm.
seen them on Mary Street.
Yeah,
Like me and my
we
neighbors, we
never-
both looked at each other in astonishment because we saw a rat running up the road. And
Mhm.
it wasn't like it was garbage day
Mhm.
or anything.
And it comes
Just
from
like a
what you're
random
talking
person
about, Michelle.
running
It
up the
comes
road.
from these issues. And this is what we have to deal with it somehow. We have to really, and the school district, I've talked to the superintendent and she feels the same way you do about the area around Columbus.
Right. Well, I think, I was always in favor of the blue bag
Mhm.
system when they first came out to kind of force people to recycle. It served a very good purpose in the beginning. But now, like a package of 5 or $9.50, people are not going to keep doing that. And that's why there's garbage everywhere.
Well,
So I really think that needs to be revisited in some way, that people can just use regular garbage bags, put to the curb and for pickup.
It would be interesting if we had sort of a moratorium on the bags to see if people would do that. Because
We've done it. We've done it before, haven't
a
we?
moratorium on the bags. And
Yeah, where they
people
would
can
take
just-
anything you put at the curb.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I know for like
Oh,
my
yeah.
side of the south side, there's currently like a lack of accessibility for the blue bags. Because if you don't live in Saratoga, where they don't do the blue bags, but like if you live in any of those houses over there, where do you go for your blue bags? You have to go all the way down to the Penn Ave Weiss to get your blue bags. I'm not sure if the gas station, the Speedway over there sells them or not,
Probably
but
not, yeah.
I know that's one thing I've heard from a lot of my neighbors on the south side is that there's nowhere for them to go get the blue bags. So that's also another thing. Yeah, but if you don't have a car, like how are you getting the blue bags to your home?
Amazon.
Yeah, but you have to
One
get
thing I was
checked.
thinking, one thing we could potentially do, and I'd have to see the rules and regulations of it. Otherwise, it's gonna have to be a donation from the city because CDBG may not cover it depending on how they look at it. What if we gave blue bags to the food pantries? Limit X number per person per visit, obviously. Otherwise, someone's gonna take a
I
ton
love
of
that
them.
idea.
But maybe 2 per visit, and then
Right. And I do know a couple people that like they get their bags delivered from like the treasurer's office. They call and get their blue bags delivered, but they literally order a whole case of blue bags, which is a few $100s, which most people can't afford to do.
yeah.
So I'm like, that is an option, but not if you can't afford to do that.
Well, I know
I like that
Vines
food
is
bank
trying to encourage
option.
people to compost more, and they have courseworks on that. But you really can't always do that in an apartment setting. I do it at my house just because I like torturing my neighbors. But oh yeah, they let the water run off so they can smell the compost. That's their fault. And the skunks are
I can
fun.
officially say I wouldn't like living next to Steven.
Oh yeah, you never would. Bagpipes and everything. No,
Now the bagpipes I don't have a problem.
the skunks are friendly.
No,
but-
skunks.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I know Vines is trying to do some stuff with composting, and maybe their community gardens do some of that for the locals, but there's not a community garden in every neighborhood either. So, and then there's the recycling, and I know some people vehemently recycle, and some people just don't care, and then there's just people that are going to litter no matter what. So, it's one thing maybe to do is talk to the school system. Actually, rather the school board. school system down to see if there's something like coursework they can offer, not coursework, but like, yeah. I mean, you can even do like a week of like love your neighborhood week in Binghamton and gotta encourage the kids to, hey, clean up your neighborhood, pick up the garbage, be nice to your neighbors, blah, blah, blah.
Our last community cleanup day that we had for the season, we did 55 bags of garbage on the east side.
Over what? How much area? The entire east
Court
side or-
Street, Robinson Street from the highway to the railroad tracks, and Bevere Street from the highway to the railroad tracks.
55.
I know when they do
It
the
was
cleanup on
awful
my
up-
side of town, they don't
It's-
ever hit my street. I don't know if they're scared, but they don't, I'm serious. I've watched them the last 3 years. They don't ever come down my street. When they do, they pick up like 2 water bottles and keep it moving.
Mm.
And I'm just laughing at them like, I thought this was a cleanup, guys. Like, what happened? They're like, oh, we'll be back. Gone.
Mm.
They don't come back. Like, I do more of my community cleanup on my street than any of the cleanups that have been organized.
But how do we leverage information that makes people want to not get in that situation in the first place? Because that's the paradigm that's changed in Binghamton. Because most people in the old days, and I'm old enough to remember the old days, took care of garbage. It was a given. It was like tying your shoes. You did it. People don't tie their shoes anymore either. So, they
Still
don't.
have garbage cans everywhere.
They don't have that
That's true.
mentality. And a lot of people, again, going back to the reputation Binghamton has anymore, people shrug their shoulders and say, what the hell? Nobody cares.
Exactly. And to piggyback on what Mary Ann is saying, I mean, I think that we can do all the renovations and the rehabs and get tenants and the people that we want, but if people don't have pride in the area where they're living,
Exactly.
it's just going to go back down again. The garbage is going to pile up and this and that. And, even if we spend $100,000 to rehab that $70,000 property, unless people have that pride. And so from my conversations with people about the consolidated plan is what I heard was, beautification projects and cityscape projects and things that will make people proud of.
And community building projects too. And I can see a liaison between the school district and the city could be much more effective than what we have now, where the city and the school district are sending the same message out to residents of a community called Binghamton.
Right. And we want people to be proud of their home and the sidewalk in front of their neighbor's home.
And
And,
their
you know,
neighborhood.
pick pick something up over there too. I really like your idea, Steve, of encouraging trade and people in the trade to give back to the
Mhm.
community through that be a scholarship or what. Another aspect of that could be like a home ownership or home maintenance academy where people who
like that.
are skilled in a trade will help you learn how to take care of your furnace and how to winterize your house. And,
Now, Makerspace kind of sort of does that. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what they do. I mean,
Really?
they do stuff with, art stuff too, but I think they have training on like carpentry and plumbing and stuff like that there. That was my understanding of it.
Yeah.
I can follow up with.
But what about more basic programs like why you put your garbage in a garbage bag and why you keep your yard clean and why you do, the things that we saw our grandparents do and we just learned from them. They don't, kids, young people, even young families today, they don't have that basic fundamental knowledge of how to take care of a property on that level. Never mind the furnace, but how do you keep the property clean and why do you keep the property clean?
Right. Yeah.
Well-
For rodents and stuff like
Exactly.
that. And also, I mean, for me, it's, my neighbor just mowed and now I'm that house. I need to mow and keep up. And
Yeah.
And now the competition is how high can the grass go before Department of Public Works
Yes.
comes and
Yeah, shouldn't
mows
be.
it,
Shouldn't be.
So
No,
the house next door to me has 7 kids under the age of 16 in it. And one parent downstairs, 2 parents upstairs. And we'll be outside doing work and the kids will be like, why are you doing that? Why? Because we have pride in our house, because this is ours, because, whatever. And they just,
They
they'll
don't get it.
walk along the sidewalk and toss their garbage and just, it's just like, I don't understand how we can help. I don't want to say, hey, teach your kids. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to, the grumpy old man, not on my lawn kind of thing. But how do we help younger families instill community and neighborhood pride? Like, you're in the only apartment building on our street. Everybody else is a single family house. There's no garbage anywhere but your place. Do you not, I mean, they don't even see it. They don't even recognize that it's different.
Seymour Avenue's
Yeah.
having the same problem
So is that,
with the one apartment.
is that a component of home ownership?
It is a
Well, the-
component.
Yeah,
but
they
it-
rent-
is
rather-
it a
They're all
component that's-
renters.
Oh,
They're all
They're all
renters.
renters, even the.
So
single
maybe-
family.
The owner of the
Yeah.
house is in, I don't know, New Jersey or something.
okay. And so that sort of comes back to I think, do you think you would have that same effect if it was a 3-family home and
But
the
here's
little lady who's retired lives in unit 1?
Be careful
you-
how you say that, Steve.
Well,
No, but the thing is,
That house was owner occupied the first 20 some years of my life, and there was never an issue with it.
Mhm.
but
It wasn't until it became an absentee landlord property with somebody out of
Mm.
town that it became,
well, and here's the thing,
disaster.
you have seminars ad nauseum about tenant rights. But what about, and I asked a state representative one time, I said, what about tenant responsibilities? Oh, we don't deal with that. So if we have a tenant rights program, can we also add tenant responsibilities? Because sometimes it's not the landlord's fault. It's the tenants that the landlord cannot evict because of New York State's laws. So we've come full circle now. We've made a crazy system consistent all the way around.
But see, that's what we did in Center City, Weed and Seed. I was actually one of the consultants that did tenants' rights and responsibilities workshops and landlord rights and responsibilities. And right now, this is what I spoke about at the town hall meeting. It is so in favor of tenants that there is not necessarily a handbook for landlords. So my suggestion was, which is my old office, the AG, Attorney General's office, look, read from the tenant's perspective. If you flip it, then it is the landlord's rights and responsibilities. But I think having those classes, and this is where I wanted to circle back to the Chamber of Commerce. They had such a program. It was called Project Pride. And it was done cleanup days. One of them was on the east side. And you have very visible signs. There's, corporate sponsors. There's, snack. Just you've done it. You know how to do
for
it.
years. Yep.
Right. But it had the business component. It was advertised. There was PSAs on the TV and radio that they help sponsor and pay for. So those are the things, again, the partnerships that we've kind of let go. And then it's the gateways that Justin talked about. And the graffiti. There used to be a volunteer graffiti abatement. In fact, code director's wife, Michelle, did that. And there was a pamphlet. It's all ready to go. I know she has the knowledge base. Maybe that could be a part-time position. But when the code director comes, those feet will be held to the fire. That vacant property officer needs to do the job.
Mhm.
And that means getting in the car and driving around. It should not be complaint based. Yes, you will have the flare-ups. Constituents should know who to contact. But you need to get out of that office and get into the neighborhoods.
And the
Sorry.
code department will tell you, because Mr. Schleider said this to our neighborhood watch group. We are overwhelmed. We can only take complaints and we can't compel anybody to do anything. And that's their attitude. And that has to change too. So we're talking about a very holistic program that we fit into as a part. But maybe we all need to go and talk to the mayor about this discussion, because this discussion is actually what the city needs.
But we did that last year and we had that discussion and it hasn't changed.
Well, but we didn't do it in an official kind of like we're watching you kind of thing. We were being very polite.
I will,
We
I
were
will,
definitely being polite
Yeah.
last
I
year.
will say this in a general sense, your best bet is to have a solid plan. If you come to city council or you come to the mayor's office without like a laid out plan on
Of
how
how
to
to do
achieve
it.
these goals, if you
Yeah.
just want to say, get rid of garbage, that's not going to go anywhere. But if you say, hey, we need to get rid of garbage, we think if you spend CDBG funds to do X, Y, and Z, that would help that would help reduce at least garbage. That's a much more positive kind of thing. When you're bringing a you're saying this is the problem, but this is a suggestion for a solution we have determined. And we're going to make a recommendation for it in the budget because of that.
So we need to have, scheduled time where we can all sit together. And unfortunately, we're going to need to have your insights to tell us what we can and cannot
Mhm.
do when we sit around to discuss this.
I mean, that's kind of what this is about, but we can talk a little bit more when we get down to the final budgeting terms.
For the purposes of the consolidated plan, I would like to jump on the idea that some other people have brought up about the gateways. I think that is really important. And if we treat the revitalization of our city as though it's our home and we're having a dinner party, what are people gonna see? You don't deal with the closets first, you deal with your foyers and your entry and, your dining room and living room.
Steps.
Yeah, exactly. Your
So-
front steps.
Great segue, because I don't want it to stay on the first topic, but that brings us to the second one, would be a geographic focus. Do you guys see geographic foci? It could be more than one focus. Right now, and the way generally we've done the con plan and the action plans is we're like, everything's important. Now, when everything's important, nothing's important. When everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So with gateways, is that the kind of geographic focus you're talking about? Or would you say identify areas like north of Maine, which is absolutely the most destitute area of the city? I'm just looking at the raw numbers. I can tell you that is a very impoverished area. It's got a lot of issues. So if you're even if you want to prioritize just by that alone, north of Maine would win. But what about gateways? Is that something, or just gateways, or whatever, or other areas? Or like you had said about blight, do we want to come up with some metrics? If we do it soon so I can figure out, I'll put it all together and run it through the mapping, where we say, hey, we're gonna look at the city and the areas that have more than X amount of crime per person, or a poverty rate above this, or vacancy rate above this. We will identify those as blighted areas and we focus CDBG funds in those areas. What do you guys think?
Would we have to do that? I mean, that's
You
the
have
other question.
roughly two and a quarter
But you're talking
million.
about the entire block grant.
Well, CDBG, ESG, and home, yes. But
Okay.
you could direct all three of those, well,
But
sort of.
see,
with
that's not practical. That's
Well,
not gonna
or you could
fly.
direct a section of it. So one thing you can do, remember the con plan is a 5-year plan.
Right.
So you could say in this con plan, although funds will go anywhere in the city, we think area A really needs a focus. So every year we want to spend at least $200,000 in CDBG funds in that area in some
Good to know.
capacity. Whether it's building new housing, whether it's doing cleanup, whether it's tree installation, street improvements, something like that. You could say that. Hey, Deb.
I really like that idea. And what I would say, and again, it's my beloved center city, but when you think of the governmental complexes and the meetings that take place here, it's not only a city, state, county. Looking at, you have your ballpark, which is, tourism. You have coming in Riverside Drive. Again, it's how we look east side coming off and down into the off the highway. Over
you-
by the hospitals.
So you're saying the downtown area?
The gateways, Susquehanna coming in.
Yeah.
The gateway court as you, the area, ballpark, post office.
Mhm.
Coming in Riverside Drive. Your hospitals, Lourdes, Binghamton General, that covers the south side. First Ward, the gateway coming down Front Street. We have them, we know them, they've been targeted.
Mhm.
Let's bring that back to prominence. But not only gateway improvements, but the graffiti. We've done
Graffiti is everywhere.
study that really needs to be taken care of within the first, I think it was 36 to 48 hours of the initial tag. Because otherwise it is a display that we care about the neighborhood.
So, have you heard any feedback from people in the area, or you yourselves, your opinions? What do you think of the various murals that have gone up? Do you think beautify the area, or do you think they look silly, or what do you think?
I like them. I think they do add something. They add, character, something people stop and take a photograph. They tag the photograph. It paints us in a good light.
I
I-
think certain ones are better than others.
Yeah, some are definitely better than
You like the
Certain
teardrop
murals are
carousel
definitely
one?
better than
Like all
others.
art.
But I find that they're where the city already looks the best. Like
So the reason I'm bringing this up,
on buildings that are already looking decent and stuff, I
Southside Commons, they were doing graffiti on that. And now they have, I believe it's 3 specific installations. I see it every day going to and from BGH. So that has solved a problem, public art, because it was all graffiti and I was calling in, there's been a party, nobody cleaned up. And now it looks presentable and I don't think anybody's touched it. And once you're done with it, there are paints and finishes that allow it, if it does get hit, an easy clean and removal.
so the reason I was bringing that up is specifically what you said. So, I know everyone's going to say graffiti is vandalism. I agree. It is vandalism. But there's a thing amongst graffiti culture that I've read about. They generally don't mess with art because they think of themselves as artists. They're outlaw artists, sure. They won't disrespect someone else's art because it's rude. And now you may say that sounds silly, but it's just sort of the graffiti culture. And that doesn't speak for every graffiti artist.
Well, that explains why the mural over on East Clinton Street is never touched.
They generally, art is not affected. So one way you can do is
that
you
would
can
be
see,
a really great target, but they have, in all the years I've lived there, that has never been
Well,
touched.
generally won't be affected by graffiti. What it may be affected are stupid kids that are like drawing glasses on
They don't
things.
even do that.
That may happen.
They don't even do
But
that.
so one identifying thing is when you see an area that gets hit constantly with graffiti, you put art there. Now, are they going to go tag something else? Probably. But if you're looking in prominent areas, especially gateways in the city, you don't want people seeing graffiti. You put a mural there. As soon as you put a mural there, you drop the likelihood of it ever getting tagged. It's just this amazingly weird thing that you can do. And I think it's kind of neat. Another thing you can do, oh, sorry, I just want to, is, again, graffiti artists graffiti people, you may not think of as art, think of themselves as artists. And you could do an outreach to that community and say, hey, look, we're tired of this building getting tagged. We're going to wipe it clean and we want you to paint a mural. So you give it to the locals, the people doing the tagging, and you say, can you paint? Do you want to draw something? Submit a thing, and whoever's the best of the whatever things we'll get, we're gonna pay for your paints and you paint it. And then that gives a sort of local pride kind of thing you can do in there. I've heard about it in other cities. I don't know how effective it is in long term. I don't even know the cost, but that's a way of kind of engaging the community, dealing with the people doing the graffitiing, but also setting up a situation where you don't have as much graffiti long term because again, they don't disrespect others' art. It's a weird thing. It's psychology. It's a strange thing.
So Kim Myers paid the old Dick's Sporting Goods building, the Video King building was tagged over and over and over again. And I was calling her, oh, it's been hit. And I'd text her, oh, it's been hit.
Mm.
And they go and they'd put beige paint
As
on
soon as
it
you
or
put
whatever.
paint, you're just creating a
And
new
they
canvas.
just kept going and going and going. So they finally put that Title IX thing across it now, and it's been a year without being tagged.
Wow. So what is the Title IX thing?
It's a whole mural about girls in sports.
Oh, cool.
That's across the building. And it has not been, none of the sides of the building have been tagged since they did that.
So that is a useful counter to graffiti. So if you identify, I mean, there are other ways of dealing with graffiti. You can make graffiti-proof surfaces. You can encourage people that are caught for graffiti, their punishment being cleaning up graffiti.
I would say,
But
did
something
notice
you
they
guys can
tagged the
do.
Court Street wall though?
Yeah.
Oh, the
They-
brand new wall.
Yep, the brand new wall's
the-
already
The
tagged.
third day they were done with it, they tagged it in one section.
Yep.
I mentioned it. I called the city and said, hey, it's been tagged, go clean it. Nothing was done in 2 weeks. They tagged a bigger portion. Then they went through another couple of weeks, nothing was happening. They tagged another portion. So now it's this, I'm going to say it's a section of the wall. It's almost as big as the backdrop there, full of tagging right on Court Street, the new gray walls, the new flood wall fixes. They completely painted it, put that stuff on it so the rock salt wouldn't kill it and everything. And then they tagged it and the city has not responded.
Blank
If a
wall, get
business
tagged.
has it, if a business gets tagged, they have so many days to remove the graffiti from
Mm.
their building. And yet the city has this now and it just finished paying to have all that done and hasn't touched it. It's, you come underneath the bridge from the east side to come into downtown and there's this graffiti with, whatever.
Mm.
It's just,
And can I quickly talk about Southside Commons Park only because that is the saddest thing to me. I was involved in the Southside Neighborhood Assembly at the time when that was all just little pieces of property owned by different businesses. There was no Southside Commons there. Do you remember what it was like,
Mm-mm.
Steve? Little pieces of the hole in the wall owned, or this one owned, or that one owned. So Matt Ryan was mayor at the time,
Oh, they made the square.
Southside Commons.
Yep,
yeah.
yep, yep.
And they, it was very gratifying to see all the people on the south side came to all these meetings at Thirsty's Banquet Room or MacArthur School, and everyone rallied around that this could potentially be a really cool little park for music or gatherings or whatever. And it came to be. Except then it just completely was ruined by, I don't know who, but they had to remove all the tables.
Mm.
There was like 6 or 7 tables in there, nice ones, wrought iron, very nice with benches. I don't know if you ever saw it, Jordan. And there's a monument memorial to all the guys that from that part of town that went to Vietnam. It's called Hannigan's Heroes because the bar that used to be there was Hannigan's, and all the guys that hung out there, during Vietnam, guys coming and going. So there's a beautiful memorial that got ruined. It has since been repaired, but most recently, one of the murals, maybe Deborah, you were integral in getting that started if you were calling and complaining, but there was all kinds of graffiti down there on that wall, and now there's a really nice mural. But the garbage that's down
Mm.
there and all the tables had to be removed.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if anybody's going to will have the desire to go and have gatherings there like there were.
Maybe
So
maybe we should try to get like some kind of Porchfest. The Porchfest doesn't affect that, right? They don't like. So
no.
maybe we should do like was it Blues on the Bridge? Do something
Well,
similar but use the
Southside
commons.
Neighborhood
but-
Assembly
Southside music
program they
thing,
do
Southside
once
Sundays.
Oh, okay.
Sundays
Oh,
in the summer.
can't really do anything in the winter.
Second Sunday of the Southside
Yeah.
Commons, something like that.
But but it's just
Mm.
not what it was originally.
Yeah.
And it's very disheartening to see how something so positive has.
Yeah, that's
It's-
unfortunate.
And there were the naysayers that were totally against the whole thing for this exact reason. It's going to end up being a hangout, bad element. No one's going to end up using it because there's too many unsavory people hanging around. It's going to be garbage. I mean, and I hate to admit it, but they're partially right. It did come to that. I don't know what the answer is, but it's sad to see that happen.
Any other geographic? Oh, sorry.
Just to piggyback on that, one of the things that we're, I think, afraid to say, but we say it in our cars or maybe at the dinner table. There is a side of the houseless issue that, and Steve, we've kind of had some conversations. Yes, there's the mental health, but at what point do we have some law and order? Just for example, and I'm going to go out on a limb on this, on the bank, as you go from like number 5, 434 going into the city, there was very neat, had an American flag, was keeping it the best could be.
Mhm.
Then there was a raid in other areas and then was joined by 4 or 5 other structures, which are absolute garbage pits that you can visually see from the road. And one of the people I was talking with that's working full-time and being able to hold a job. I don't know how he's able to, but is formed some of my opinions and advocacy. At what point is there law and order and the safety for the residents? The needles that are being found, the
Well, I mean,
garbage, which creates the unsightliness.
I mean, there's only so much you can do from this committee's perspective on
But
addressing that.
nobody's, I'm putting my foot right in the soup or in the shoe fly pie
Yeah.
by talking about that. It's such a balance, and I don't know where to have that because there's the compassion. And then we all have to use garbage bags, and that's not going to help the riverbanks.
Yeah.
But what point do we as a society have norms of which we can effectively be a society?
So the governor on the state address on Tuesday addressed some of that. And the state's going to be including in this year's budget a whole section on battling the homeless crisis and new tools for helping mentally ill, helping sanitation, helping et cetera across the state, not just in New York City. So you might want to check the governor's page on that and look at that. Maybe there's ideas that they're going to use for the statewide system that we can utilize in Binghamton, not to crack down and evict so much as to help and lift up and see what we can do. But
I mean,
there's going to be money made available, like hundreds of millions.
so like with homelessness, so if we identify that homelessness is the major cause of this, I mean, the major causes of homelessness are pretty much mental and physical problems. Take away someone who has no physical or mental problems, that person is unlikely to be homeless unless they just have the absolute worst luck in the world. And even then they can hopefully easily recover from that with a little bit of help here and there. So then you deal with the mental and the physical issues. And the mental issues can be all sorts, we don't really, what was the comedian I was watching the other day? It used to be that, someone starts talking to a tree in the middle of the park and screaming at it. Well, years ago, the guys in the white suits in the van would pull up with a straitjacket and take them to get help. We don't really have that much anymore unless someone's doing something crazy and super crazy. And then the chemical dependency, you talk about the needles. I mean, we can put the blame of that going back to the pushing of, a certain particular family of very wealthy pharmacy people that really aggressively pushed a certain drug onto doctors and said it wasn't addictive. And because of those situations, I mean, how do I say this in a PC way? This is the crack epidemic for white people is what the term I've heard used with the opioid addiction. And it's Binghamton doesn't have it. Well, let me phrase that. Binghamton does have it bad. In fact, I heard a story about a friend of some friends who passed away because he came up here to deal with his heroin issue. I said this was not the place to come. But rural America is being gutted by the opioid crisis, absolutely just taken apart. And I feel so terrible for that. But that being said, if we identify homelessness is being caused by XYZ, how can we address this? You know, one way, housing first. We've talked about that. Other way, funding programs that deal with opioid crisis. Fairview Recovery Services. We do provide funding for their outreach worker or their crisis outreach worker. And then the mental stuff, you know, you've got Mental Health Association of Southern Tier. They did get some funding to expand. Those guys are kind of cool because now when the police run into that, they should. If the police run into a situation where they see a potential mental health issue, they call those guys. Those guys show up with the stab vests and the training to help calm that person down and get them into a place to help. So those are sort of, you're not addressing the final. You need to address that. You need to, the term I like to use, you patch the holes before you start bailing out the ship. You got to patch the holes. Otherwise, the ship's going to keep filling with water if you bail it out, bail it out. So they can arrest people, you know, for all these things, but it's not going to address the ultimate issue. And this is something, again, I'm not putting down you guys. This is something, you know, you're not going to fix the world with CDBG funds, but you can address and you can target specific things that you think are primary issues to target with this stuff. And how do you do that with the limited funds you have? And it is limited, and that's really sucks. But that segues into needs and goals and priorities. We need to come up with goals for the annual action plans to follow. Now, how I've done this in the past is you guys say demolitions, fund this agency, do this street, do this park, do this capital project. And I go, okay. And then I backwards engineer the goals from that. I don't like that. HUD's okay with it, but it's kind of crappy. We really should have goals spelled out. Those goals should have numbers attached to them. They should be funded by certain amounts, and they really should be prioritized. So if you say housing is our #1 priority, put at least 50% of the CDBG money in it. Our goal is to reduce homelessness by X percentage, or to reduce the number of vacant units by a certain amount, or to increase homeownership rates by a certain percentage. That's how the goals and priorities should work. So that's what I'm asking you. Now, again, we don't have to have everything solved tonight. You've got several months still, but, you know, be thinking about do you have any ideas for needs and goals now, priorities we should address? You guys, from here, I'm seeing talk a lot about housing. We talk a lot about homelessness, and honestly, those two are intertwinable, but one of those is one and one of them are two, or we even somehow merge into some one mega goal. You talked about youth, accessibility, education. Education might be a little bit higher up because you've mentioned several like sort of education-based type things. But yeah, youth, accessibility, economics, blight. I'm not sure where blight would go on this, if it goes even in the first goal, or if we want to have some other goals. And how do we address blight? How do we, you know, how can we set goals to deal with blight?
Garbage cans that don't look like mailboxes.
Because people just put garbage in the mailboxes?
Yes.
Okay.
Or at least put trash on the thing so you know it looks like City of Binghamton blue. I'm like, oh, it's a storage box for the postal service. And they're just making them look nice. Because in my neighborhood, the mail person starts carrying and drops a bag in a grayish blue box, and then goes and does the street, comes back to the box, picks up the next street, goes up and down the next street, and then does down the other side of the street from this gray box. And when I first saw those downtown, that's what I thought it was. And then because you can't really see it doesn't say where the garbage flaps are. It doesn't say trash or anything on it. And it just needs to say trash or something.
Well, I think honestly that everything the city puts out there, we have this in the city logo, there's this sort of emerald green color. We should have a standardized color so people start adapting that as sort of, when they see that, they instinctively think, oh, that's a city something. But
They're blue.
If, you had a long list there, but if we could take the blight and kind of the beautification one and intertwine them with the gateway, I think that prioritizing the gateways can be done with a measure of eyes. What does the road data say about
Mhm.
that? How many eyes are coming in that particular gateway to the city? I think that's one way to also be good stewards of this money is to spread it as, make as much impact as we possibly can. And where are the people coming into the city? Let's make it look nice and start there.
And whose responsibility are like the gateway exit ramps? I know,
State, city, or county, depending on
yeah,
the,
depending
who
on
owns
what the
yeah.
road is. Because in the past, it was all the Adopt a Highway programs and the beautification projects with Project Pride that Deborah was talking about. And certain ones you signed up through the state, certain ones you signed up through the city, certain ones you signed up through the county for, and you got your name, the corporate name or family name or whoever wanted to sponsor that section. And you were responsible for mowing and planting and doing all kinds of stuff there. Now, I know at some point several years ago or a decade or so ago, there was something about insurance for that, and it was a whole big drama. But all the other communities, when you go to other cities, still have those signs, still have beautiful entryways, and ours are overgrown and ugly everywhere through Broome County. I don't understand why it's just us.
Mhm.
Even Syracuse, you get off and go right into South Salina Street, which is no better than, Fayette Street, and yet it's beautiful. Like the coming off the highway is all mowed and there's flowers and there's a welcome sign and welcome to Syracuse and everything else. It's not until you turn the corner and go around the block do you see the stuff. Whereas in Binghamton, it's boom, you're right there. The trash is.
I like this idea of the stuff as being the term that we want to avoid.
Well, I
It's
think,
right there.
Yeah.
The
I think-
trash is right. I mean, it's on the highway. You don't even have to go off the highway anymore. As soon as you get on the highway at exit 4, from the conversion site off of Broad Street, all the way on along Bevere, up onto the highway, and then the new ramp over to go to Airport Road, it's just trash all along the highway because you can watch it blowing out of the city trucks and the Burt Adams vehicles
Yeah.
going right along the highway.
You know what?
Every morning I follow one of those trucks taking my partner to work
Aren't
over at the
there
airport
DOT
center.
requirements to cover themselves when they're carrying
The
garbage?
flap is going like this and the garbage is just spewing out the side.
But aren't there DOT requirements saying you've got to lock down? You can't just have stuff flying up
Yeah,
here?
they don't follow it.
They
The
don't-
city
for the
doesn't
la-
and
for
Burt
the
Adams doesn't.
landfill. The landfill requires it too. They'll turn you away if your load isn't covered.
Hmm.
But it's a fabric and as you're going
Yeah,
60 on the
yeah,
highway, it's
no.
doing this and the stuff's just
No, I get it.
bellowing out.
okay, so a perfect example of gateway and beautification is up on Court Street, where they redid Court Street. And in the median, they planted all kinds of trees. All the trees were dead the next year because I talked to someone about
Probably
it.
salt.
They never maintained. I
Oh.
think they plant it and okay, it's all, now I don't know if the DOT or the city. And then there's
City
that
did.
huge building that's right there. Do you know where I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
right next to the fire station.
Next to the fire station, that's, a former multi-apartment building that's, all the windows are out. And it's a disaster. So they redid the street, they redid the curbs, they did the ADA accessibility, planted the trees, and then walked away. And I mean, for that one season, it looked nice, but the grass was never mowed. And the same thing
They
on
never
Hester
came back to the
Avenue.
mulch. They
That's-
never did the mulch
That's
again.
all done, where they put the new Greenway project all along the south side to where Vestal Ave and the Parkway meet, planted all those trees. The grass was a couple of feet high. It's never maintained, and half of that stuff
But
is
only in the
dead.
city. You go right to the Vestal line and the Vestal part of it is perfectly manicured all the way to the university. It's only in the city. It's not mowed.
And her example is a perfect thing about what I wanted to say. Whatever we recommend, can we also explore partnering agencies or organizations that would be able to take, because that's a lot of what we do. We do even neighborhood cleanups. I'm against them because we did a neighborhood cleanup, and on Meadow Street, the drug dealer, a young man from the South, sat on the front steps and watched two old ladies pick up the street. And we found out later he was the major drug dealer on the street. You have to have follow-up, you have to have oversight, you have to have, so whatever we recommend, can we also recommend a maintenance or a survival plan for whatever it is we want to do? So if it's gateways, how do we maintain the integrity of what we've done so that doesn't happen?
Well, I will say this, one thing you could do, if you're trying to come up with, like I said, you identify a problem, you offer a solution. In the 5-year con plan, you can say every year we're going to put X amount of dollars towards maintenance of this gateway. So at least for the 5 years, you've got that gateway. If you say year 1, you do some sort of improvement, and then for the next 4 years, you
And in the
commit
meantime, you're
to,
looking for, as a body, we could be looking for, or the city could be looking for partners to take after that 5 years.
or
because-
the next con plan, you say, the maintenance worked. We may want to continue that maintenance or as something we want to look towards, or you can be
I
creative
think a
with it.
combination of both is a good idea, because I think it's a community building,
What is a good
a
idea?
combination of both of what I'm talking
Oh,
about,
okay.
getting other agencies, and, that would be the impetus, is that the city has resources and they can reach out to other agencies or other entities, because there has to be a partnership or it's not going to work.
If we set a 5-year goal on something and we adopt a ramp sponsorship for 5 years after that, then we can adjust our put the money towards another spot that needs to be addressed, and just keep doing that until we have a full cycle where the community is actively engaged in helping keep those gateways looking.
Well,
They are. But one of the things, when the state is done with something and they turn it over to the city, or they turn it over to Vestal or whatever, isn't it then the city's responsibility for maintaining those greenways?
Yeah, but it's one of those sort of unfunded mandates. Here you go. We're not going to give you extra money to do that. Now your park
I know,
department
but they
has to mow and your
literally-
highway has to take care of
It's
it.
so weird because they mow right up to it for the park, for MacArthur Park, for most of that way, and already do the loops there on the south side. They do that loop already. So there's literally very little spot where it's like not just 2 swipes more from where they're already working. It's mind boggling to me.
So in the 5-year plan, you could identify things and say, okay, year 1, we're going to do the thing that's going to be the major renovation. Years 2, 3, 4, we do maintenance somehow. Year 5, spending on how to figure out how to, come up with something that will like transfer it over. So for example, for a gateway cleanup, you could then say, all right, we would like to turn this over to Vines to take care of in the future. Maybe their youth program can kind of handle this, or turn it over to the school so the school can say, if they have some sort of civic engagement coursework they require of the students, part of that coursework could include cleaning this up or something like that. So the issue is always going to come down to, for a lot of these things, like I said, once it becomes an unfunded mandate and anybody's limited on resources, whether you turn it on to a nonprofit or whatever, if they don't have additional resources, unless they can get another grant or something to handle it, or with the city, unless they raise taxes, they're adding new additional tasks with the same supplier or smaller of employees. So that's always going to be a problem with maintenance. And that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of this stuff has kind of fallen apart, is just because of that. You guys talk about code enforcement, and if you're talking about mowing, you're talking about parks, you're talking about streets, you're talking about DPW. Those departments get shrunk every year.
Absolutely.
Every single department in the city, except for 1 or 2 that I won't talk about, usually get reduced by a goal of 10%. Almost every single year. It's difficult to then meet all the requirements of additional, maintenance efforts or additional tasks that are required of them. And that's always going to be the problem.
So in New York City, they have neighborhood districts where the business owners and the condo communities and building owners and whatever help pay to have a person that goes around and does that specific area. So my apartment in New York City on West 53rd, a portion of our pay or what I pay every month goes towards this guy's task. There's two of them.
Like a neighborhood tag?
He goes along with he's got a vest and a whole uniform on. He has a cart and a bin, and there's a garbage can and a recycling bin. On the side of it there's a sweeper and a this and whatever, and a poker and whatever. And he goes along and he cleans up trash and there's a Times Square one where there's like 20 employees that do it. There's a Union Square one. I live in oh my God, I'm blanking.
I had that in Arlington, Virginia too. Very similar. Yeah, it's a good idea.
It's a neighborhood thing anyway. So they go around. So ours has only two people. So one works the first half of the day and one works the other half of the day. And then they go around. Well, the guy who works in the morning, they always put the younger guy who's working. If there's two, the younger one works because the cleanup in the morning to get ready for rush hour after all the bar crowds the night before is a little bit more stressful. So, especially in the winter, but that's what keeps most of Manhattan as clean as they can, is doing that because the city crews have been decimated.
Manhattan I've been quite a few times. It's relatively clean. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's not, Japan clean, but it's still pretty neat and organized for the most part.
Yeah. And the neighborhoods with these people are even cleaner. Like Times Square is nasty, dirty. A lot of times there's a lot of garbage because it overflows because there's so many people, but those aren't New Yorkers. Those are tourists dropping all of that. They don't care about New York. And you go into the actual neighborhood areas and they're pretty darn clean given the number of people.
Yeah, some city residents take a
So
lot of pride in their city.
So I'm wondering if there is something that downtown or the business section of the east side or the South Bridge section of the south side, if there's something that a city partnership with something can help pay for people.
And they now have to use garbage cans in the city. No more garbage bags. Did you see that whole segment
What?
on the
What?
news? No garbage bags for garbage
In Manhattan?
in Manhattan.
Oh,
No,
Garbage
I don't put my garbage
cans.
out.
Garbage cans
We have a chute.
are required. Yeah, and it's
Where it goes, I don't care.
and it's to reduce rats.
yeah, I see that.
It's to reduce rats
Yeah.
and broken garbage bags.
Charlotte's the same way. They have a big green one with wheels for recycle and or garbage and a big blue one for recycle. And most cities are like that now. I think Ithaca's even's got that now.
One thing that you notice too, when you go to a city and you're like, oh, wow, this is clean. They don't have a lot of that, the grit and the salt and the sediment and everything like that's everywhere after the snow. I don't know if we have a way of cleaning that up a little bit.
Well, we have the street sweeper.
Yeah.
But I don't know how active it is. I mean, the winter is always going to be harsh.
Yeah.
Just because of the snow removal.
What is the street sweeping schedule?
Well,
Like, I wish
nobody
like
knows.
we
We
need to
asked
have a
about it.
schedule, like
Randomly.
if New York
We
City
asked
could have a
about it.
schedule and clear the street so that it actually gets the garbage that's in the gutters, Binghamton should be able to do that.
But sidewalks too.
See, this is where it's tricky because the city of Binghamton several years ago paid for this sidewalk cleaning machine that also helped remove gum. And I'm not sure what happened if the person, that position evaporated, but that was, but like the other things, you make a phone call and say, this needs to be done. And that was made downtown last summer, last fall, and we started looking better for that part. But it's constituents calling and call your council person and ask that XY area or street and ask for DPW.
maybe what we can do too, as we make recommendations, is we set aside funding to find some kind of an agency that can carry out those kinds of things, you know?
Mhm.
So that it becomes ensconced in that agency's mentality as well. Maybe we could do something like that. I don't know how it would work with each subject. We're talking about gateways and housing and things like that, but it might be an option. And I must say that in my neighborhood, the street sweeper is awesome. He comes at least once every 2 weeks in the summer. It's awesome. But he always comes the day that I've mowed, the day before I want to mow. So my stuff goes back into the thing. So it's crazy. But no, he's been, the street
He always
sweeper's
comes
been
to
great.
mind when the street's full of cars and all the garbage and the trash and everything
So he
is just
goes around it.
underneath them. So he goes around it and it's in the gutter.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, if we knew, like if they had, hey, east side, the street sweepers on these days, no parking on the right-hand side. And then the next week, no parking on the left-hand side. And that's what they do in New York. And that's why the
I mean, they
streets
do that with the snow, so we do it with snow anyways.
Yeah, so why can't we do it twice a month for,
Why don't you just do it every day? Every day. If it's an odd day, you do this, and if it's an even day, you do this, and that way you know ahead of time and it's all taken care of. You don't have to worry about when the snow thing starts. But that's gonna affect parking. That's just gonna be an issue with parking then. Okay, so it is like 8:15. I was gonna talk to barriers to services, but we don't have to tonight. If you guys want to float me some ideas on that. I don't want to keep you here more longer than we need to, but we've talked about a lot of really good points, a lot of really good items. I want you guys chewing and chewing and chewing on this.
barriers to service.
Chew on it like it's a leather belt in your
Barriers to service, your 10% reduction in staff every year.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, but like when they talk about reducing the budget, we have to go through and we have to figure out anything we can just trim off, trim and trim and trim. And it's
We
at a
done
certain
some
point,
trim.
you can't trim
At some
anymore.
point, you can't trim anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we're at that
but
point.
at the same time, you can't go, okay, everyone, do you like services? Yeah. Do you want to pay more in taxes? No. Okay. I mean, there's a great Simpsons episode where they have the Bear Patrol that explains that so perfectly.
Well,
So,
as someone who recently bought his house and had his taxes double from what the same house had previously paid, I would like to have the entire city have it been reset so that reassessment citywide. So some of these college housing projects that are paying, or these downtown lofts that are paying next to nothing in taxes can pay what I'm paying. Like some of them are taxed at a value less than my little one-story bungalow on the east side. And they've got 20 people paying, $900 a month in them. It's ridiculous.
well, anybody who will be paying less in taxes will be all for this, and anyone who will probably be paying more in taxes will always be against it. So,
It's,
yeah.
I wish mine were $1,700.
But really, there is a problem when you look and see that there is a huge building for sale on Washington Street, and I think it's listed for, last I looked, was something like 3.2 million, say. I don't know how many unit beds are in
Jeez.
there. But the building is assessed for only 190,000. So that's what they're paying taxes on, that assessment. But they're probably charging how many thousands of dollars per bed?
Exactly.
Think what the rent is per month.
I like the reassessment just because I'm a fairness, egalitarian kind of guy. So I like reassessments, but I
just think it's
understand.
been
I understand why
30-some
people don't
years.
like it, and I understand why people like it. So,
What was it, 1993, the last time we had a citywide assessment? It's been a while. And our housing stock has changed drastically in those 30 years.
That tracks. My assessment's like 4,700 or 47,000 for my property. That's why I only pay 17.
That's what mine was before. Now it's 90.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of realtors told me don't get it reassessed.
you get star later. Well, you get star now, and then you get the advanced star.
Well, I could always sell my house. And move.
So do we want to keep discussing, or do you guys feel like you want to go home? We can always talk about this later. I'm going to try to write up these notes and get it out to you guys.
No, we should have more of our colleagues.
Yeah, we need more of our colleagues.
Um,
We got
Steve,
through.
One thing, if I
Yeah,
can,
yeah,
if
go
I
for it.
can add, just because it's a non-agency stakeholder question and that's more time sensitive. Have we ever had anyone from the unhoused population in to talk to us about services and what's good and what's bad, what's working and what's not?
You know what? That's a
Jeez.
really good question. I can probably get someone from the Y or VOA to make a recommendation and bring someone in.
I know if we reach out to Sana, she's got a bunch of
Or
contacts.
Sana, okay.
She was one of the like co-leaders of that unhoused initiative thing that was done at DSS a few months ago. It was done at like during like the evening hours. I know she has a lot of unhoused people she could reach out to that I'm sure would come to speak.
That might be good because it's not like an agency seeking funding is asking somebody to do it. They're not feeling pressure to say, oh, the Y is great.
Now,
because
now,
Y
remember the
program-"
trick is though, like I said before, the two major causes of homelessness are going to be mental and physical disabilities.
Yeah.
Physical disability might be easier to deal with someone. I have had my own run-ins with individuals that are homeless that you can tell there's something off. We had a lady call or managed to get hold of the White House a few weeks ago and raised a big ruckus on one of the homeless agencies, and I had to deal with that and talk to our HUD reps who then passed that on to the White House. And that was an interesting thing because I forget what they were saying, but I think they were claiming people were trying to murder them and all this other weird stuff. And
Formerly unhoused.
well, there's
suppose,
formerly
work
unhoused,
as
and
well.
There we go.
that's actually a requirement for some of the homeless agencies to have someone on staff who was formerly unhoused. So I might be able to find both
Wasn't,
or
what's her
one or the
face
other.
that runs the manor on the south side? Wasn't she a former client for the YW?
I can what I'll do is I'll reach out to the agencies and say, is there someone you can bring in that can speak on the nature of what it is to be homeless in the area?
The addiction
And-
center at Broome County has people who work on their staff now who have gone through
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And that sort of physical dependency, although it can be a mental disability too, especially if they're sober, that's a really good
Yeah,
insight
But they've,
into at
they've
least
risen to
the
the,
drug
to
dependency.
the staff level
at-
now. because-
But we don't want them so removed that they can't speak on the current situation, the current services being offered. And the other thing is, and I don't know where we could get these answers is we do see a lot of agencies that seem to have duplicative missions. You know, they're seeking the same population, they're helping the same population. And I'm kind of curious, is that doing us a service?
Hmm.
Or are we just spending overhead here and overhead here that's not actually going to fix the problem and help people?
That's a good point.
Do we have too much overlap in these agencies seeking money?
I mean, there are a lot of youth service providers in the area. What if they partnered up? I don't know.
Right. It definitely strikes me as I sit here.
Generally the homeless things like the YW is women and families with small children. The VOA is men. But then again, the YM is also men. So yeah, I don't know why one group, unless there's more homeless than even individual agencies can tackle. But yeah, no, I get it.
Physical repairs, like the road, the post 80, $300,000. Yeah, but, I mean, I don't know about using CDBG money for.
Well, that's up to you to determine when it comes to budget time, if you think that agency should be awarded that. One thing you should certainly look at in context to this meeting is, are they addressing an unmet need? Are they addressing something that is vital in the community and is necessary? You make that determination. That is up to you.
Well, there was something, I think, in the press about Post 80, I think it is, over on Main Street, was opening its doors to the people who are out in the cold, who are homeless. So that was a good thing. When I saw that, I thought, too bad they need a roof,
Yeah.
She didn't mention that in her presentation, that they're using.
No, and I don't know whether that's a new thing or not, but I did notice it. It's in the Press Connect.
Right.
I did send 3 events their way to help get them more money. So I spoke to Sandra after the meeting, got 3 events to go their way to, I'm like, I don't know if we can give you the $300,000 for your roof or whatever. I said, it's very unlikely that we can have that much money to spend in one group. I said, I don't know if we can help in the worst, because we told her to go and get the the estimates based on various spots and whatever. I said, I don't know if we can get you money, but I'm going to help try to steer events your way to get money and more stuff. So, and I did that. I also gave her all my media contacts, so maybe that's why they're in the press connections. But
And I
that was
think
last
too, they
Wednesday.
are a population that we need to support
The
in,
veteran?
yes, in what they do in that organization.
Well,
I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't know. I think it's unrealistic I could not vote for all that money to go to
I don't
one
think any of
place
us
for a
can,
roof. Yeah.
which
Well-
is why we asked her to get smaller bids and whatever else.
well, and I did send an email that she had sent me, but I do want to, probably a better way of thinking of that is if you identify that veterans need assistance, you figure out then what's the best use of the money that is available. Is it giving it to post 80 or is it working with the Veterans Administration or Soldier On or that deals with homeless veterans? So it's like that's kind of what you got. You can identify you identify a group that is being underserved needs, and then part of it is determining how's the best way of meeting those needs. Maybe it's post 80, maybe it's something else. So, but I will say this: I don't think there was any other veteran based groups requesting funding this time.
Steve, could we add Brian Vodacek from Broome County Veteran Services? Because they're also in charge of the project on the north side with their community like conference area and then the tiny house.
I can certainly reach out to them. I'm going to say that the last few years, not only myself, but also Chrysalis, we've hired for the analysis of impediments fair housing and did the home ARP plan, have the hardest time getting any veteran group to talk. And I don't know what it is. If it's just a dislike for government agencies or something like that. I don't know what it is, but there has been a real pushback on following up, doing callbacks, filling out anything, responding to emails. It's not happened. And that doesn't mean this won't happen this year. Doesn't mean I won't be able to talk to this person. That's good that I have an actual name there instead of just.
County employee, so
Yeah.
we should be able to get back to you.
Yeah. All right. So I'll reach out to them and see if we can get hold of them.
He comes and uses the vending machine right outside my desk every single day. If he doesn't get back to you, just tell me. I'll go go up and knock on his shoulder every time he's at the machine.
Come
The
to the meeting.
CDAC is waiting to hear from you. Like, I will bug him.
All right. All right. I'll do an outreach.
Yes, I'll encourage.
That would be
the
a
bug.
stakeholder, a non-applicant stakeholder, which is what we'll do at the 3 meetings from now. Okay.
We good?
To you.
All right. So we got 3/4 of the way through our consolidated plan discussion today. Let's close out our meeting for today, the 25th at 8:28 with a final look at attendance. Let's start with Deborah. I sound like I was on the radio right there.
I'll make a motion to
25th.
dismiss.
Final,
22nd,
I'll make a
sorry.
motion to adjourn.
I second.
final.
What do we have to
Attendance.
do attendance?
Deborah Hogan, mayoral appointee.
Thank you.
John Brunza, mayoral appointee.
Mary Ann Callahan, mayoral appointee.
Michelle O'Loughlin, member at large.
Jordan Trice, 5th District.
Justin McGregor, 7th District and Chair. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. We'll see you next time.